Harrison Ford is going to be Red Hulk in the MCU. Yes, that's a true tidbit of information that most comic book movie fans are already aware of. That being said, I'm here to rock your worlds even further than Han Solo taking over the mantle of Thaddeus E. Ross.
Good to see you.
What if I told you that Thunderbolt Ross himself will not actually be the leader of the Thunderbolts for very long? In fact, he may not even be the leader of the ragtag team at all.
Off the map.
In this video, I will not only explain how and why Red Hulk will not be the true leader of the Thunderbolts in the MCU, and I might even spoil the whole movie itself. Let's go! Now, before I just go spilling all the beans, we should quickly remind ourselves about the comic book history of the characters involved. And not only what is, but what will be going on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe coming up in Phases 4, 5, and 6. Ready?
All right.
First and foremost, let's start by establishing who the Thunderbolts really are. Shockingly enough, the initial Thunderbolts group was not actually named after Thunderbolt Ross at all, who we will talk about later on in this video. My elite level of puniness aside though, the Thunderbolts were originally conceptualized by Baron Helmut Zemo, who sought out to rebrand his original group called the Masters of Evil. Side note here, Baron Zemo is in the MCU and is confirmed for the Thunderbolts movie. Moving along, the original Thunderbolts were villains masquerading as superheroes, and although they did have to keep up appearances at times and fight off a few bad guys, they were really more interested in gaining private access to other super teams like the Avengers in order to attempt to disband or even sabotage them. I mean, this is just classic supervillain stuff, right? The original Thunderbolts team consisted of the aforementioned Zemo, Goliath, Beetle, Moonstone, Songbird, Fixer, Jolt, Hawkeye, Charcoal, Ogre, Mankiller, Plantman, Cyclone, Harrier, Skane, Vantage, and at one point, an undercover Tony Stark using the name Cobalt Man. And boy, did we just get lost in the weeds for a second there. Okay, from there, the Thunderbolts went through a plethora of even more members, believe it or not, and there have been a handful of different leaders over the years too. The most prominent of whom, besides the good Baron of course, are Wilson Fisk, Luke Cage, and Thunderbolt Ross, who we are still going to talk about coming up, I promise.
You have second thoughts?
That being said, whether it be a hero or villain leading this Suicide Squad-esque team, one consistent theme remains the same every time. The Thunderbolts tend to toe the line of good and evil before eventually going legit. Bonafide anti-heroes, I tell ya. Now, over in the MCU, other than Marvel Studios announcing the lineup, we have not actually seen or met or heard of a Thunderbolts team yet. However, seeds have been sown, and we do know that the movie version of the team will fit the description of anti-heroes and characters with dark pasts that are coming together to pull off some sort of dark operation, either for or against some government conspiracy. Also, this version of the Thunderbolts will see some unique members and consists of the Winter Soldier, Yelena Belova, US Agent John Walker, Taskmaster, Red Guardian, Ghost, and of course, their supposed leader, Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Allegra de Fontaine has been creeping around the background of Phase 4 movies and television series, slowly assembling her twisted take on the Avengers. As I mentioned a moment ago, there have been quite a few people to join and then leave the ranks of the Thunderbolts in the comics, some of whom are parallel to what the MCU has planned. For instance, the Winter Soldier, Taskmaster, and Ghost have all been full-fledged members in the books and are slated for the flick. So where does Thaddeus E. Thunderbolt Ross fit into all this, right? Well, in the comics, Ross was also at one point a member of the makeshift team before going on to leading it himself. That's right, it only took until the 7th iteration of the group for writers to make Thunderbolt Ross the leader of the Thunderbolts. But hey, they did it nonetheless. At this point in time, Ross was already transformed into the Red Hulk, something I'll break in just a moment. Be patient as it all ties into my overarching theory here. Anywho, Ross, or Red Hulk, initially joined the Thunderbolts as a way to atone for his past actions and prove himself a hero. Naturally, Ross's leadership qualities became overwhelmingly apparent, and he was eventually appointed to head honcho. Before his tenure as the leader of the Bolts, Ross dealt with conflicts beyond just supervillains, going head-to-head with government agencies. This also ties into the clear direction that the MCU is headed in, but we'll unpack that in just a moment. Red Hulk would eventually become a respected leader and legitimate member of the superhero community. Deadpool, Elektra, Punisher, Agent Venom, Ghost Rider, Mercy, and finally Red Leader, who is going to get discussed more in just a few minutes here. They were all present alongside Ross in what is the 7th iteration of the Thunderbolts. This lineup is also quite unique, and my personal all-time favorite, and that's more than likely because most of these characters are more high-profile and mainstream, but this video is not about me and what I like, so I digress. To try and make some sort of connection between the comic books and the Marvel Cinematic Universe here, I should point out how some members of Ross's version of the Thunderbolts tie into the current landscape of the MCU right now. Deadpool is on his way in Phase 6 with Deadpool 3. Elektra and Punisher will probably be featured in Daredevil, Born Again. Agent Venom is Flash Thompson, and we know he and the symbiote are out there somewhere. Ghost Rider was featured in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is canon, and we'll fight you over that fact. Mercy is nowhere to be found yet, and the Red Leader, or simply the Leader, was last seen all the way back in Phase 1 during The Incredible Hulk. Remember that dude who said he was going to try to help Bruce Banner, but was really replicating his blood, and then ended up growing a totally huge head before the Hulk and the Abomination threw down? Yeah, that dude is Samuel Stearns. And not only does Stearns have a hand in creating the Red Hulk in the comics, but he also eventually turns red himself, if you couldn't tell by the aforementioned codename. During the comic book storyline Fall of the Hulks, the Leader orchestrates a plan to create an entire army of Hulks. To make a long story short, the Leader ends up manipulating Ross into transforming himself into the Red Hulk by exposing the General to gamma radiation, super soldier serum, and an explosion. So if I had to guess, the Leader will probably have a hand in creating Red Hulk in the MCU as well. While it's been confirmed by Marvel Studios that Samuel Stearns is returning as the fully mutated, green, and glorious Leader during Captain America 4, or Captain America New World Order, depending on who you ask. Apparently they're changing the name of that movie for some reason, but that's a whole other video for a whole other time. So let's move on. Not only is the Leader confirmed, but Thunderbolt Ross is confirmed to be returning as well. Now, Ross's return isn't exactly falling into the canon category, as General Ross has been a prominent figure, working his way up and around the ranks of the US government throughout the entirety of the MCU thus far. What is a surprise, however, is that it's also been confirmed that the General has actually moseyed all the way up to the President of the United States since the last time that we saw him. Not only that, but as I brought up way back at the start of this video, Harrison freaking Ford will be playing President Ross in the MCU going forward. Mind blown! For those who don't know, the cast change to the iconic Harrison Ford from the great William Hurt happened due to the recent tragic passing of the latter thespian. Rest in peace, William Hurt. Condolences aside, casting Ford to play Ross, although epic, does seem quite odd considering the actor's age of 80. That being said, it's obvious that they'll probably try to transform Ross into the Red Hulk fairly quickly during Captain America 4, because then it's all just CGI from there and, you know, Harrison can get some well-deserved rest. But even with that being the likely circumstance, Red Hulk is capable of transforming back and forth. And with Ross being such a prominent character in the MCU, it's still odd that they picked an older actor like Ford to carry this character on throughout Phases 5 and into Phase 6. That is, and hear me out here, unless Thunderbolt Ross won't be prominent for very much longer as we move forward in the MCU. Now here's where I crack this theory wide open, but before I do so, let's rewind just for one more moment back to pre-Red Hulk Ross and the Incredible Hulk movie. Two key things that we have not covered yet: Ross's disdain and obsession with the OG Hulk Bruce Banner and his daughter Betty Ross. In both the books and the blockbusters, Thaddeus Ross is borderline obsessed with the Hulk and wants to own him. Literally, Ross believes that the Hulk is government property, and thus Bruce Banner is government property. Could President Ross feel as though all super people are government property?
How about dangerous?
Could the title of Captain America 4, New World Order, imply that a one-world government is afoot and Ross could be leading that initiative? Ooh, time will tell. And now on to Betty Ross. She loves Bruce Banner, but we haven't seen her in years and years, and it's not even entirely clear where she's been. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and guess that she was just blipped away during the snap, but that does not explain her massive absence. Coincidentally enough, Betty Ross actress Liv Tyler is rumored to have been approached to reprise her role in Cap 4 as well. Preliminary to getting into how Betty Ross plays into everything, one thing I have not gotten into yet is what exactly President Thunderbolt Ross's connection to the Thunderbolts in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is. To simply put it, I am more than certain that Thaddeus Ross has some sort of low-key connection to Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, who's been sort of like the Nick Fury of the Thunderbolts, assembling this off-the-books team behind the scenes this whole time.
Walker! My God! Let's go!
Hey, Mr. Narrator guy, I thought you said President Ross would not be the leader of the Thunderbolts. This all makes it sound like he will be the leader. Thumbs down on this video. Yeah, I'm sure you're all thinking it, and a lot of you want to type it into the comments by now. Maybe you already have, but rest assured, I've covered all my bases, and here's where the juice really gets squeezed. Imagine, President Ross manipulates the public's perception of Earth's mightiest heroes, and society starts to dislike the Avengers, blaming them for all the alien invasions and cities being destroyed over the last 2 decades and whatnot. Bear in mind that Thunderbolt Ross is fixated on the Hulk, borderline obsessed, and let's assume the president has wished he could get his hands on Banner himself this whole time. What if the leader were to approach Ross, persuading him into taking part in an experiment that would transform him into a Hulk himself? Remember how I said earlier that Ross in the books leads the Thunderbolts in hopes of atoning for his past and proving himself to be a true hero? Well, I think this is what will precisely happen in the MCU. I predict that Thaddeus Ross will put the wheels of the Thunderbolts team and their initiative into motion, turning the world against supers and transforming himself into Red Hulk in order to fight Hulk. After attacking or possibly even defeating the Avengers as we know them, Ross will realize the error of his ways and recognize that Earth's heroes are pivotal in protecting the planet from future multiversal threats like, Kang the Conqueror perhaps. Although he will fight alongside the Thunderbolts a time or two, Ross will ultimately and heroically sacrifice himself for the greater good of humanity. This explains why Marvel Studios would be down with casting someone as high in age as Harrison Ford to play the Red Hulk. Think about it. Harrison Ford will mostly be seen as a CGI monster on screen, and then they'll kill the Thunderbolt Ross character off, passing the mantle of Red Hulk and the leader of the Thunderbolts team on to someone else. But who? Who, you ask? Guys, if you've been paying attention, I already told you. Cue Betty Ross. Oh yeah. My theory is that Red Hulk will die a hero. However, that last bit will not be known by his daughter Betty. Betty will see her father dead at the hands of who she thinks is her former love, Bruce Banner. Banner will try and convince Betty otherwise, but she will have so much animosity towards the Avengers and Bruce as it is. A combination of her father's obsession with the Hulk, the snap, public perception of heroes, as well as the lies and conspiracies surrounding the team of anti-heroes, and the president's other affairs will turn Betty into a baddie. And not in the good way. Betty will choose to undergo a transformation of her own. In the comics, Betty Ross takes after her father by becoming Red She-Hulk. Yeah, that's right. There's a Red She-Hulk. Speaking of She-Hulk, as seen in the MCU, a fringe group of weirdos called Intelligentsia messed with OG She-Hulk, Jennifer Walters, throughout her titular series. In the comics, Intelligentsia kidnapped Betty Ross at one point, to which Hulk saved her. However, this event was the catalyst in Betty eventually transforming into Red She-Hulk. Perhaps Captain America 4 and the Thunderbolts movies will focus on and play with some of these plot points and themes, as all of the pieces are in place already. In the end, my theory is that some of the Thunderbolts will align or realign with the Avengers before Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars takes place, while others choose to remain underground and work alongside Valentina and their new leader Betty Ross, the Red She-Hulk. They will carry on with the Thunderbolts name in honor of Betty's late father, and it's actually Red She-Hulk who will be the true leader of the Thunderbolts team in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Remember, you heard it here first. And there you have it. That's my theory on how Thunderbolt Ross, being the leader of the Thunderbolts, is going to be a sort of swerve to set up the Red She-Hulk. Does this all make sense? Did I just spoil Phase 5 of the MCU? Be sure to tell me in the comments.